While Obinna was walking with his companions in the street, they passed a poor old woman who was begging at the side of the road, while the others would not lend her anything, no attention. Obinna felt a pang of pity for the woman. He returned later in the day to give her some money, and this became a regular habit. Over time, they became friends. Obinna took the poor homeless grandmother to a building still under construction, where she could find shelter. He brought her food and fed her day after day. The old woman was so grateful that she felt like she had found a son. People usually laughed at Obinna every day when he passed by because of his appearance, but to the old woman he was a savior, although most people thought the worst of him and assumed he was worthless. Obinna had a pure heart despite his suffering. At times he visited his grandmother. She tested him and was reading the Bible, preaching about God, and the importance of having a constant relationship with him, no matter how difficult life gets. These words touched Obinna deeply, shaking him. Because he had never heard of God, or felt God's love in his life, Obinna struggled inside, torn between giving his life to God or continuing with his only means of subsistence. Soon it was time for the grandmother to leave and to return to her village, where she hoped to await death. She had suffered all her life and felt ready to join God. She hugged Obinna tightly, begging him to do her one favor, give his life to God, no matter what. Obinna cried uncontrollably, knowing his only true friend was leaving for good. He made her a promise as he watched her leave, knowing he would never see her again. Before she left, she placed a Bible on the ground for Obinna, defying him to pick it up. The day he decides to give his life to God, she said the Bible would be waiting for him, and she would die happy if he did so. With tears in her eyes, Obinna stared at the Bible on the floor. He found himself at a crossroads, facing a decision: discover God or continue with his old ways that day. There, as he was walking home, Obinna couldn't stop thinking about it. All night his mind was tormented. Finally, he decided to go back and get the Bible and start a new life. But just before he could act on this decision, he received a call from one of his brothel sisters, who later came to his house to tell him about a millionaire man she had met. She explained to him that she had told the man that she would come with him and that he would be her clients. That night, Obinna told her he was done with that life and planned to leave the next day. However, she persuaded him to join her for the night, promising him a large sum of money and assuring him that he would never have to return to that life again. Obinna reluctantly agreed to accompany her to meet the client, hoping that it would be the last time. The girls offered their services to the wealthy man, who was very pleased that night. When morning came, Obinna returned home with a large sum of money, which he had received, but his friend did not return with him. Unknown to Obinna, she had stolen money from the man and had fled with her millions. When the man discovered the theft, he flew into a mad rage. He decided to set a trap, calling both the girl and Obinna to meet him at the side of the road. The next evening, Obinna tried to reach his friend, whose number was no longer reachable. While the man complained of not having other choices, Obinna went innocently to the rendezvous with the man that evening. The man brought 4 men advanced towards him with a determined step. Their leader immediately began to accuse Obinna of styling their boss. Obinna tried to explain that he had no knowledge of any theft, but the chief ordered his men to beat him up as he assaulted him. Obinna's secret was revealed. The men discovered he was wearing a fake foam bra and realized that he was actually a man. The chief's anger intensified. Being homosexual was something despised and met with hostility in their society. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the dusty streets where his bruised and broken body lay. Lying inert on the ground, his once beautiful face was now swollen and mutilated beyond recognition. Blood pooled beneath him, staining the earth. Bright red stark contrast to the colorful makeup, his now forever closed eyes loved to wear the faintest hint of a tear, as if in those last moments he had glimpsed the promise he could never realize the day before. Obinna was filled with hope. For the first time, he'd considered the possibility of a different path, a life where he could finally be free from the chains he had held for so long. He stared at the Bible the old woman had left behind. Its cover worn and its pages yellowed, but it seemed to shine with the promise of renewal. It was torn between the lure of the easy money his dangerous life offered and the peace he felt in the presence of the grandmother who had become like family to him, the only person he had truly seen for what he was. But Obinna's heart was heavy as he tossed and turned in his bed. He thought of his grandmother's words, "Give your life to God," no matter what her voice echoed in his mind, soft but firm. She had held him so tight before leaving, her fragile arms transmitting a strength he had never felt in anyone else. He had promised he would try, and he intended to keep that promise. He had decided to pick up the Bible, to start over, to choose another life, but fate apparently had other plans. Plans the unexpected visit from his brothel sister had been a test of his will. She had lured him back into his old ways. Just for one last night he needed that money. She had insisted to finally escape the life he had imprisoned so long. Obinna had hesitated, torn between the promise he had made and the very desperate of what seemed to be his only option. Just one last time, he had said, and then I will be free. But on this last escapade, everything went wrong. He was not greeted with clemency, but with brutality. Men had set upon him, the points falling like lightning, their MUXs like knives. They had discovered his secret, and their anger had turned into a blind rage to them. He was not only a thief, but a disgrace and abomination in their eyes. His very existence was an offense to their beliefs and their values. Their fury was fueled by ignorance and hatred, and they built it without restraint. Mercilessly, Obinna had shouted, trying to explain, begging for his life. But his voice was lost in the blows that continued to rain down in the darkness that swallowed him whole. He had planned to pick up that Bible that day. He had planned to start a new life. But life had not given him the chance. Obinna lay there, his body cold under the dim glow of the streetlights. The world around him went on, unaware that he had lost a pure-hearted boy. A boy who had been dealt cruel cards, still found the strength to care for others, even when no one else cared about him. His dreams, his hopes, his promise to the only friend he had ever known. All of it was silenced in that moment in the hospital. Obinna's father lay on his sickbed, his face marked with regret. His health had been declining for months. His strength was fading from a mysterious illness that no doctor could cure. As he lay there, he thought of his son, the boy he had rejected in his quest for perfection. His heart ached with nostalgia for a desire he had never known. His father told him he was sorry, that he wished he had been a better father. But now it was too late. Obinna's mother sat in the hospital, hands shaking, thinking about her mistakes. Tears rose to her eyes as she whispered, "We will find him. He will come back to us." But deep in her heart, she felt an unspeakable terror. She had been complicit by her silence, by her failure to protect her child from the man she loved, and now she too would have to live with the knowledge that they had both failed. The one person they were supposed to love unconditionally. They didn't know that their son was gone, that he would never come back, that he would never cross the threshold again from their house. The Bible that the old woman had left lay in the excavation site untouched, waiting for a boy who would never come back to get it. A breath of wind passed, rustling its pages as if it too was mourning the loss of a soul to whom it had never given the village a chance to live. The old woman was sitting near her window, looking out at the horizon, waiting for news from Obinna. She knew her time was running out, but she clung to the hope that he would find his way to God. Her whisper, "Take care of the boy." She didn't know that he had already left this world, that his life had been cut short too soon, that his dreams had been crushed under the weight of a world that had never understood him. There, an old woman saying, "A child is like a seed. Feed it with love and it will blossom, neglect it and it will wither and die." Obinna was that seed, a beautiful soul who had the potential to blossom, to bring color to a world that desperately needed it. But instead, he had been left with his light extinguished by those who should have protected and loved him. Obinna's story is a warning to every parent, every guardian, every person with the power to shape a young life. It is a reminder that love and understanding are more powerful than any form of discipline or severity. A reminder that children are not meant to be molded in our image, but rather to be loved for who they are and free to discover their own path. Obinna did not die because he was weak or because he was lost. He died because the world betrayed him, because the people who should have loved him the most, who should have nurtured his unique gifts, turned their backs on him when he needed them most. His story be a lesson, a call to action for every parent and guardian, because a child is like clay. He takes the shape of the hands that shape him. May his hands be kind, may they be gentle, may they be filled with love. Because in the end, it is not the child who fails it. Is the world that fails the child, and so the name of Obinna fades into the silence of the night, a name that should have been remembered for his gifts, his kindness, his beauty instead. He is held for a shortened life, a broken promise. The wind carries his story, hoping it reaches the ears of those who still have a chance to make a difference, to save another.
Thank you so much for staying tuned until now. If you haven't subscribed, please do well to press on the subscription button and also do well to press on the notification bell so you are aware when next I'll be posting my next story. And until next time, bye bye.